Don't let the fact that you can't draw stop you from creating interesting art journal pages. There's a really easy fix for that. And here it is. Use napkins. Napkins come in any theme, any subject matter that you want. This one comes from NINNYSNAPKINS.com. We've got these nice size birds, kingfishers, beautiful colors, and we can use this as the starting point for our journal page. Use it as our focal image. Now I've rough cut one out and I'm just going to show you how to do that. And this is really important. You need to cut it out of that square napkin shape because that's going to allow you to play with the image, um, play with the composition, decide what size art journal page you're going to use it on. So here I've cut out another one, and now while I was initially thinking to use one, I've now upped my size of my page to the 9 by 12 art journal page, and I think I'm going to put two of these kingfishers together. As I said, this napkin comes from NINNYSNAPKINS.com. All my napkins do. There's a link in the description box. Go and check them out, and I'm sure you're going to find something that you will love to use in your art journal. So I've turned this differently. Now that I've rough cut these around, keeping the plies on, I am ready to take the excess plies off before I glue. And you really need to do this with the napkins. So I've taken off one. The second one's being a little bit finicky. It's not coming off. It's really adhered. And sometimes that happens. Just be patient. You can put a little bit of glue stick on your finger and just peel it off. Now, this one seems to be really tightly attached, so I'm being a little bit careful as I'm pulling off little by little. You don't want to be too rough because you may end up ripping the top layer, and that would not be a good plan. So I'm going to do that with the second one. Then what I'm going to do is water cut around it. Now I cut fairly close with the scissors, but I am going to water cut because I want that deckled edge. I find if you use just scissors, you get a very straight edge, and that shows up more on the art journal page or on the mixed media piece that you're doing. If you use the water brush, I'm using a fine line brush, a little bit of water, and I'm going, 1 or 2 inches by 1 or 2 inches. You go slow and steady. This isn't something you want to go and, put your brush 3/4 of the way around your focal image, little by little. And because I've cut so close, I'm just being really careful, holding down the dry part of the napkin with the one finger, one hand, and just using my nail to peel that off. Now, I'm not worried if I take a bite out of my focal image because I am going to show you how to take this focal image and make it look more painterly, right? Remember, this is kind of the cheat to those of us who can't draw. We're just going to use somebody else's art and then we're going to embellish it. And that's later on in the video. So I'm just working my way around, cutting off as much of the excess. Now in this background, there's some blue. And so if there's color in the background, it's even more important to remove any of that excess napkin. Now I'm cutting around this branch, but quite honestly, you can just paint it out later, and I'll talk about that later. I am giving my art journal page a good coat of gesso, which I will then dry. So there are my two kingfishers. I love the colors of these and the size. They're a decent size. This is a 9 by 12 page. So I've positioned them, and now I'm going to use fluid matte medium, and I'm going to put some fluid matte medium underneath and then on top. And I pour it into a little cup because I find that that's harder to clean off of my craft mat or my glass sheet. So I put some underneath, and then I'm very gently putting a coat on top to seal the napkin. I want to turn that into a non-porous surface because I am going to shade, I am going to paint it later. And if it was raw napkin, it wicks in a rather unpleasant way that you're not going to want. So then I put half of it, then I lift the other half and glue that down little by little. Now, you'll notice my branch doesn't go all the way to end, but that's okay because I am going to paint over top. And if I had chosen to just cut not fussy water cut around the branch, if that was too difficult, I could just paint that on. I think painting a branch is within my abilities. So I'm just gluing that down, and I've removed the other one just to give me space. I'll glue this one down, and then I'm going to come back and glue the second one down. Now I've chosen to glue it down before I've colored the background because I want to keep the beautiful colors of these kingfishers intact. And there I have both of them glued down. Now, there was some of that blue that was in around the branch that I wasn't able to water cut off. So I'm just taking a little brush and I'm dabbing gesso along there. And that's just whitening that out. Now, in the end, I end up you doing a background that is blue tone. So that probably would have masked that. I wouldn't have seen it. But at this time, I wasn't exactly sure what color I was going to use on the background. And I just wanted to remove that excess blue. I'm just dabbing gesso around the kingfisher. This further blends that edge and makes that disappear. Because I don't want it to look like I've just glued down a napkin. I want to hide that fact. So people look at it and think, oh, Karen had painted this by hand. She did it. So I just, come back, add one layer of gesso, then another. Now I love adding texture to my background. So I'm using the TCW modeling paste and this scrollwork stencil from the Crafter's Workshop, putting some modeling paste on my key card, and I'm just going to put this in 3 different areas. This is adding some pattern to my background. It's adding texture, all the good things. Now, remember I was going to use my 7x10 art journal page. You could also use these kingfishers on a card. But if you were using a smaller scale, smaller substrate, you wouldn't necessarily want to use the modeling paste. You want to have wide open areas so that whatever technique you're using has the full capability to shine through. You want the full benefit of it. If I did this on a card, my kingfisher would be underneath it and it really wouldn't benefit the overall. But because I've gone on a bigger substrate, I'm going to be able to enjoy using, some stencils, some modeling paste, and other techniques because there's just more real estate to play it. So when I really want to use a variety of techniques, I go onto a larger page. So now that that modeling paste is dry, I'm going to colorize it. And I've decided to use some light blue permanent and my lighter version of Naples yellow. I think that's Amsterdam brand. I prefer the Naples yellow from Liquitex Basics. It's a bit darker shade, but you know what? I bought this, it was on sale, and I'm going to use it. So I'm mixing it wet and wet right on top of the texture paste right on top of the gessoed surface. The gessoed surface allows me to blend my paint a little bit more effortlessly. If I had raw paper there, some of that paint would soak into the raw paper and I'd end up using more paint at this stage. So that's why I gesso. I want to keep the background fairly light because I want my focal images to be what is most predominant. I'm using a latex glove here simply because I've had hand surgery again and I just want to keep any of that acrylic paint out of the scar until I'm completely healed. So I'm just mixing that. It's making some green in the background. I like the model background. I don't like backgrounds that are just one shade, one tone. That is boring to me. Now you could have done just Naples yellow in the background, or I could have gone very, very neutral with a beige or unbleached titanium. And that would have given a very different look. But the good news is I have 6 more of these kingfishers, so I can do another background, totally different colors, and my focal image is going to look very different. So when you order napkins from Ninny's Napkins, you get 2 napkins, which gives you plenty of opportunity to experiment and do different art journal pages using the same focal image. Now I have some of that burnt sienna in there, so I'm adding that a little bit to my background, just a smidge, just to tie everything together, to make it all cohesive. You want the colors that are in your focal image to show up somewhere else. And somewhere where I've put it where the texture paste was, modeling paste was, it's really bringing out the pattern of that. Now I want to add some more interest. So I grabbed my script stamp as I'm putting some black acrylic paint on with a makeup sponge and I'm stamping. Now I know I'm going to do more stamping and stenciling and I'm choosing to do the black script first because I want those other layers to come on top of it, which is going to push the black script back. I don't want this predominant. But I'm adding a little bit of script here. And a good basic script stamp, always something great to have in your stash. You'll get a lot of use out of different size script or text because it works for any theme, no matter what you're going to do. So I'm liking the look of that. So I'm giving that a dry. Then I grab this stamp. This is from the Songs of the Sea stamp period set. It's kind of a mesh, and I'm putting the red oxide or burnt sienna color on here. And I'm just stamping. Again, I'm introducing that burnt sienna color. It's on the bird. I just want to incorporate it a little more with a little bit more pattern into my background. I want something interesting. I have a lot of background space here, so I want interest. So I'm just putting a little bit of this, playing with it, thinking, okay, is that enough? As I go, I don't really have a plan. I'm thinking, oh, maybe this will work, or maybe this will work. And you don't need to know every step. Then I grab this Little Diamonds stencil from the Crafter's Workshop. This is one of their cake designs, but I'm using it here. And I'm adding Prussian blue. I wanted some contrast, tying in the blue with the kingfisher. I love this diamond shape. It's somehow the bird seems to be that diamond shape and the beak, and it seems to play off each other. So this one, I just, you want things to go together. Again, a good basic stencil. And I'm using a stencil brush here from the Crafter's Workshop, working so well. And I'm loving the diamond shape here. This just made me happy when I put that in. It was like, yes, but these diamonds again are smaller scale. And now I'm going to continue going on. I'm building up a little bit more because I'm so happy with the diamond shape. I'm thinking, oh, that really works. Then I grab my makeup sponge. I'm putting some of that burnt sienna on it. I'm just rubbing it ever so lightly on top of where I have the modeling paste. That's just bringing out that pattern. I want to have that pattern, that interest into my background. And I really wanted to bring it out at this stage. And I'm adding a little bit And then you'll see me going back over the same one again, darkening it. Start with a little bit. Do you like it? Do you want more? And some places I have more, some I have less. Here I'm adding white with the same diamond pattern. I just wanted to brighten it a little bit. This is very little bit, very, it's not in your face, but I like how it looks. Kind of reflection from the darker ones. You got to experiment. You got to play. Then I'm deciding, I'm thinking pretty much done, and I am shading or edging my page. I've got black acrylic paint on my angle brush. This just frames the page. And when I think I'm done or I don't know what next, this is what I do. I frame it and I help myself decide, am I done? Is there enough here? Has this all worked together? Now we haven't colorized the birds. Now you could leave the birds just the way they are, but we are going to add something to it. But first, I want to lighten that background. The background got a little dark. So what I have on the side there is some white gesso that I've thinned down, and I'm doing a wash of white gesso. This is just knocking all those colors back, dulling them up because I was afraid that my birds were going to get lost. So I'm just softening it. It's like putting everything in a cloud over top of it. And I like the much softer effect that this gives me. Now I'm colorizing the bird. And what I'm doing is I'm taking some blues. I've got a blue-green there from Amsterdam. It was in my hand, and some light blue permanent. And I'm trying to match the colors of the birds from the napkin. I'm adding a little white gesso. I'm brushing it on wet. I do thin the acrylic paint because I don't want complete coverage. I don't want to obliterate all the detail that the artist put in, but I do want to tweak those colors, brighten those colors just a little bit. Now, as I'm doing this, I'm going, okay, it's not quite the right shade of blue. I'm kind of losing some of the colors. I'm looking at the napkin. As guidance, you can bring up pictures on Pinterest and match the colors. You don't have to worry about getting it exactly what's in the napkin. You want to get it close. And so then there was kind of blue green. So I grabbed some green in there. And as soon as I put that green in there, it was like, yes, this is what I want. So I'm putting, I've got a little bit of the green, some um, Prussian blue, and some light blue permanent. And I'm just dropping it wet on wet, and it gives that kind of watercolory effect. It's just tweaking those colors and making it look like it's painted, not something that you've just glued down. This is the cheat for those of us who can't draw. And I'm coming in, whitening and brightening some of those white areas. And I know I'm going to add more detail down the road. I'm going to add some of the feather lines that maybe got pushed back a little too much as I've overpainted. And I just keep going, dropping in color here, there. And because it's sealed, if I make a mistake, I can get a baby wipe and wipe it back and start. So here I'm just painting the branches. So you see, if I hadn't cut out the branches, I could have pretty much painted a straight line or a wobbly line with those branches. So if when you water cut, you choose not to cut out the branches or they break off, don't worry, you can just paint them on using the napkin as a guide. I just took some brown paint and I've got black paint and I'm using a liner brush. And when I use the liner brush, I typically thin the paint down. It just makes it work a little bit better. So now that the branches are painted, I'm using more black, thinned paint, and I'm just adding some of that detail, adding some of the feather lines back into the page. I want some of that detail in there. And again, the key is just light touch. And I'm not worried about making it exactly what was there. I'm just looking at the napkin and just adding in, the little bit of the line work that makes the feather stand out. Keeping it very, very light. And again, if you mess up, grab a baby wipe, wipe it off, and there you go. You can reapply. But that you really do need to put that coat of fluid matte medium and seal it. Here I'm just flicking the top of the head with some black detailing. I am going to come in and add the white back in. So after I do the black, I'm going to add white, and that's going to brighten it. And again, add more line work to bring out the patterning of the feathers. Now, when I did this, I chose to do two birds because I thought, Valentine's Day is coming, and I'm going to put a sentiment in here about Valentine's Day. I opted not to, but you could. Birds of a feather would have been good. The napkin was a very wintry scene, and what I have here isn't necessarily winter. I've changed the background more neutral. Here I'm adding the white. This is brightening it up, makes our kingfisher stand out. I'm quite anxious to be done with the latex glove because it just feels awkward to create with it, but you do what you got to do. Now I wanted to bring out more of that texture, and so I put the Prussian blue on the makeup sponge, and I'm going right over top of the burnt sienna, so you get both colors, but I love the Prussian blue on there. I needed that little bit of contrast, a little bit darker. I guess maybe now that my birds were darker, not sure. But this is what I mean. You make decisions as you go. You don't need to have everything figured out before you start. And because I've added some things, lightened it, I'm re-edging my page. Just adding a little bit more black, getting a little, making it a little bit thicker. It needed more weight now that everything, again, is tied together. And I'm adding a little bit more shading on the bird as well. Not going to do too much. I'm quite happy with how the bird has turned out. So I grabbed my Winged Wonders sentiment pack, which is all about things with wings, angels, dragonflies, butterflies, birds, and I cut out the sentiment, spread your wings. I bubble cut, so I got rid of most of the white except for very little. I didn't want too much white to show up. I wanted the sentiment to be there, but not be in your face, playing a little bit with how I want to set it up. Deciding I'm just going to put it here. It fits best. And so I'm just going to glue that down with fluid matte medium. Once that's dry, I'm grabbing some copper paint, thinning it down. Now, I find the metallic paint takes a while to thin down. So I keep adding water, keep adding water, keep adding water till I get it to the consistency I like. and have it all well blended. Grab my fan brush and I'm splattering. The copper color is very much the burnt sienna, but it's got bling to it. And I'm just finishing off my page. And then I'm going to take off the tape that I have on the left-hand side there and dry it. And there we have the finished page. I love how this all came together. So there's the original napkin, and there's our finish. So if you can't draw, don't worry. Follow these steps, buy some napkins, and go get creative. Until next time, go have fun.